climate change is going to affect the poor people in the world and the poorest countries in the world most relatively. So this is also manifestly unfair in the sense that they are the people who had least in terms of creating the problem, in terms of emissions of carbon dioxide. So the social problems become worse, but it will also make all the other environmental problems more difficult. Forests will disappear, water will become scarcer, and so on. And last but not least, I mean, it will make economic life much more difficult because there are enormous costs of adjustment, which are called adaptation. So the effect of climate is basically to make all the other problems worse. And the IPCC, to which I belong, the latest report simply confirms what was going on before, just to rebut the climate skeptics, so to speak, who are a vanishing minority at the moment. First, climate change is very much a fact. The facts very clearly show that global temperatures have risen, the sea levels are rising, ice is melting, and so on. The evidence is very... The second point which the climate skeptics bring is, well, even if it is happening, we can't do anything about it. No. Human intervention, it's also a long word, anthropogenic influencers are 95% probability the cause of this climate change. So we can do something about it. And the third line of defense, of course, is that there are two responses we can do. One is treat the cause. You know, when you fall sick, you can treat the cause or you can treat the symptoms. The cause is, of course, the carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere. So treating the cause means reducing our emissions of carbon dioxide. And I think the garment industry can do an enormous contribution in this area, and many of you are doing that, the responsible ones, the ones in the room. But more can be done. So mitigation, reducing the emissions of carbon dioxide is treating the cause. But we know, unfortunately, that we have already spewed out, particularly the industrial countries, so much of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere already that some kind of climate change is going to happen whether we like it or not. We can't stop emitting carbon dioxide even if we commit mass suicide and stop breathing. But the fact of the matter is that whether we like it or not, we're going to have 2 to 3 degrees of global warming starting from about, well, it's already gone up about almost 1 degree within the next 20 or 30 years, and by 2100 we'll have 3 degrees of global warming. So we have to then treat the symptoms. And what are the symptoms? Well, as I said, there will be shortages of water in some areas, but paradoxically flooding in other areas. So wet areas get wetter, dry areas get drier. There'll be problems with agriculture. You can already see in many parts of the world, farmers are talking about changing weather patterns. Excessive heat waves, extreme events, things like typhoons and hurricanes and so on, will become much worse. So expect more disruptions in your supply chain, expect more difficulty in getting raw materials, and so on and so forth. And of course, markets will be disrupted. So this is, in a nutshell, climate change, which is going to make all the other problems of the world more difficult.
Wow. So the reports definitely state there are, well, I would say, daunting futures for not only for the fashion and apparel sector, but certainly for the globe. And you know, I almost feel a little bit guilty sitting here, actually coming from Copenhagen, where we had the COP15 in 2009, obviously, that sort of led to, as I've sometimes understood, a little bit of the climate fatigue that happened afterwards. And we've been talking a lot about audit fatigues during the sessions we've had here, and certainly we heard from Kumar this morning about the 57 rise in audits on a global scale, even more in Bangladesh. So, you know, this idea of climate change fatigue is still something that I see also as an issue to deal with. So really, what should we do to achieve sustainable development with so many reports on one side saying that we have to act now, and so many, you might say, skeptics on the other side, or at least people who do not know how to act, because it's such a complex issue?
So basically, what are the 4 points? One is a message of empowerment. This I call making development more sustainable. So if we think of sustainable development as a peak that is covered with clouds, you can't see where it is, and even I don't know what it is exactly. But to climb any peak, you take one step at a time. You don't really need to see where you're going if you're going uphill, right, which is where you want to go. What it means is when we leave the room, we switch off all the lights. We are making development more sustainable. We make sure that we turn off the taps. We can plant a tree. We can eat less meat. And in the apparel industry, I know there are hundreds of things you can think of that you can do to make something more sustainable by your individual action. So this is empowerment. It's very important not to think in terms of only the grand vision, which is not going to be achieved tomorrow, but as a step-by-step process. The second one is, of course, we talked about earlier, the Sustainable Development Triangle, that we are driven mainly by pursuit of profits. And when I say we, I don't mean you personally, but generally the world. We are looking at the world of stock markets and GNP and so on. But basically, there are other things. There is a social dimension, and particularly social capital, which is the glue that binds societies together. It is what makes life enjoyable, human interaction. And in the process of building economic capital, the buildings and the highways and so on, we are destroying social capital. If you go to a city and a woman cannot walk the streets of that city in safety without being raped or mugged, then that is not sustainable, because they may have all the economic capital, the glittering lights and all that, but the social capital is lacking. And this is seen over and over again. The other dimension, the third dimension, of course, is the environment, and I won't dwell more on it. So the second principle is the Sustainable Development Triangle, and respect the balance, which means that it is good to be profitable. I don't think that one should wear a horsehair shirt, literally or metaphorically. But in the process of making profits, you can also be good for the environment and good from the social side. So that is the message, that we can have win-win outcomes. And the third one is, of course, a change in values, which is that we need to have more sustainable values. We need to think in terms of sustainable consumption and production, and a whole lot of other things which are going on in our heads. So we have to rethink the boundaries of the mind, and that is extremely important for everybody.
Wow, another big challenge there, to change the mindset of both manufacturers and consumers to actually get us in the right direction. But like you say, I like your metaphor in terms of the peak that is surrounded by the clouds, and just, you know, take one step at a time. We talk about the journey. A lot of the times in terms of we are on a journey, you never become 100% sustainable because it's a moving target. You know, it always evolves. So it's difficult to really get there. But certainly we need to act on this. Coming to a close, I'm sure we could discuss much more about sustainable consumption and sustainable production in more detail. But I wanted to get back to the point that I was jumping at from the very beginning in terms of, so what can be done within the fashion industry, and how can the fashion industry perhaps even show leadership in order to get us moving even faster along this road?
Yeah, let me encapsulate it into a single answer because I know we are running out of time. The first point here is sustainable consumption is extremely important because of three facts. One is that we are consuming more than one planet's worth of resources at the moment. We are consuming 150% of what the planet can safely produce at the present time, ecologically. 85% of that consumption is done by 1.4 billion, that is 20% of the richest people in the world. So basically, the rich in the world are consuming more than one planet's worth already. So where are the resources to lift 2 billion poor people out of poverty when we are already consuming more than a planet's worth? So this is why we need sustainable consumption and the corollary to that, which is also sustainable production. That we have to manage our consumption so that the affluent can maintain their lifestyle, the quality of life, but with less packaging and less conspicuous consumption and excessive waste, particularly waste. Think of food waste, which is 30% of the food that is produced is wasted. In US homes, 50% of the food is wasted. And there was a huge food waste program in Denmark just a week ago, which run by a friend of mine called Selina Jewel, which your minister attended. It's a great success. So there are a lot of areas where consumption and so on, where wastage can be reduced so that you make room for the poor. In other words, to grow more sustainably and achieve a better lifestyle, but without sacrificing the lifestyle of the rich. Now, on the production side, I don't have to tell you. If you look at your supply and value chains, you can see many areas, whether it is in the sourcing or in the process or in the marketing or the retailing, where you can reduce carbon emissions, you can reduce water use, you can reduce energy use, and so on. For example, to produce a cotton shirt, I'm told that you use 10 times by weight the production. So if you produce a cotton shirt, shirt's worth 1 kilo, you're using 10 kilos or 10 liters of water to produce that. And that can be improved substantially. The waste that is going into landfills and other things, very important. And then that is from the social side, particularly the safety of the workers and the working conditions and salaries and so on. So there are many things that the fashion industry and the garment industry can do. And last but not least, let me also tell you that working only on production will not suffice. You have to finally address overconsumption. This is a very tough ask with the sense of, I mean, you have fast fashion and always it's a question of markets and getting people to consume more. But eventually, you see, this is what happens. However efficient you are as a producer, when you produce more efficiently, the cost of your product goes down and it stimulates more consumption because people, so you can never catch up. This is known as Jevons paradox because Jevons was an economist in the 1800s who discovered this. That every time technology improves, it doesn't reduce resource use, actually increases resource use because people buy more. So we have to face that issue. And that means that when you advertise, now I'm not talking about fashion industry in particular, but anything, toothpaste, you're always tweaking consumers to buy more, buy a bigger tube, a volume discount, and so on. Now, my friends in the advertising tell me that you can use the same mental techniques to tweak people the other way, to make them consume more sustainably. But we don't do that because it may be bad for your business. So we have to get a cycle of sustainable consumers and sustainable producers working together to build a sustainable society. And that's my final message. The problems are very, very daunting. The hour is late, but we still can do something, and particularly the young people, with the change in values and coming to the fore. that the fashion industry can be a leader because you are looked very much as a kind of jet set, the leading, and you are very much in the limelight. So you can be, if people say, these people are embracing sustainability. They are chic, but they are sustainable. Okay? Why can't we? So I think you can be leaders for the 21st century model of sustainable development. And I think the young people in the room today have a special responsibility, not only to make the change, but also to save your own future, because your elders have not done such a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Chic and sustainable. Let's take that with us.
Thank you very much, Jonas. Thank you, Mohan. I've known you for a long time. I wish I had heard you speak before. That was fantastic. It really was. Thank you. Jonas, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have the great privilege of introducing our next speaker. He's a good friend of mine. He is the CEO and president of TC Squared. TC Squared is the gold standard, if you will, of research institutes in our industry. They are pioneering a lot of technology. They don't necessarily invent the technology, but they do an incredible job of figuring out how to take new technology and apply it to the fashion industry. And Mike Fralix from TC Squared is going to come up and he's going to talk to us about innovation that's taking place in technology right now that is fundamentally rethinking the supply chain and development of fashion products. So please welcome my friend, Mike Fralix.
Thank you, Kurt. I'm not going to make you stand up. I'm not going to ask you to sing. But I am going to ask you to open your minds a bit, to think about some things in a little bit different way. Even this whole thing about what is TC Squared, people have been asking me, what's the squared part? And well, it stands for Textile Clothing Technology Corporation. If you're algebraically inclined, that would be TC quantity squared. And we've been around since 1980, and we had our roots in technology, always based in technology. And in the 1980s, we were developing robotic lights-out sewing systems where you had vision systems that would look at a piece of fabric, store the image in memory, and then use robots to pick up the pieces. And well, all that lost to the low-cost labor in other parts of the world. But we continued our quest for technology, and what did we need to do next? And part of it became to help people understand what are the things we need to be aware of around technology, and how do we help companies implement those technologies. And at one time, we got this nice reputation. They said, TC Squared is an industry think tank. 15 years ago, I thought that was quite a compliment. After having a chance to visit around to a lot of other so-called think tanks, I decided I didn't want to be called a think tank anymore. I wanted to be called a do tank. We want to get things accomplished, and we want to be known for that. And we want to be known for innovation thinking. And as Kurt said, not necessarily inventing things, but recognizing when things come along that our industry can take advantage of. And it's one of the ways in which you can sustain an organization like that is to reinvent itself every 3, 4, or 5 years as the industry is moving forward. So I gave this really long title, Trends and Technologies, and we're going to look at product development, supply chains, retailing, you name it. I'd almost like to think of it as, let's look at the past, talk about the present, really drive the future. And actually, I don't spend too much time in the past other than being aware of it because I only have 2 legs. I had to keep one in the present and one in the future. There's not enough room for all that stuff going on in the past. But how many of you remember aircraft detection before radar? There were a number of methods that were employed for detecting aircraft before we had radar. And there was even a team-based system that was established. Of course, today is different. What happened? Technology happened. It's not the only place it happened. How many of you remember when you needed a forklift to transport a 5 megabyte hard drive? Some of you probably do. Here's the rest of the picture. being loaded onto a Pan American Airlines flight. 1956, first 5 megabyte hard drive, and there it is at a workstation. That's the big piece sitting on the floor for 5 megabytes. And gosh, what do we do today? In the palm of our hand, we have memory sticks that are even greater than this now. In fact, here's some with 2 terabytes of information in the palm of your hand. Workstations have changed a bit too. So what happened? Yeah, technology happened. Well, also there was a lot of process change. And some technologies we've been talking about for a long, long time, but we don't seem to change our processes even though we put in the technologies. For example, one technology that's been around a very long time is inkjet printing. Now, the applications for our industry are not necessarily as far along as what we would think, because people hear about it, but then they don't do it. And I don't know how many of you can see this shirt I'm wearing. This is not a yarn-dyed woven shirt, even though it looks like it, even this close. It's been digitally printed using some ink chemistry that was developed by Kimberly-Clark that does not require that the fabric have any pre-treatment chemicals on it, and it does not require any steaming or wet post-processing to fix the colorants, which would make it a little bit more sustainable. Of course, digital gives you all kinds of flexibility. The other thing the shirt was done is the print was engineered, so we only put the color on a part of the fabric that was going into the finished product. Looks like a pair of jeans. It's denim. It's probably about a 10.5 ounce denim. But it wasn't woven. It was not a yarn-dyed woven, because if you look on the inside of these jeans, they're white. They were printed using that same nanoparticle chemistry that printed this shirt. We've been working on a project right here in Sri Lanka with Kurt and GT Nexus for denim that's being loomed by hand. More sustainable? Hard to argue that it's not. What is sustainability anyway? You hear all kinds of things. Is there anybody in here that knows how to calculate their personal carbon footprint? Oh, we've got a couple. Are there any that want to know? No, most people do not want to know. How many of you here want to be able to contribute to a more sustainable environment? Yes, everybody wants to be able to do that without having to think about it, without needing to go through all of these formulas. So just write down these 3 words and you can do it. Performance without waste. If you use less water, you're more sustainable. If you use less energy, you're more sustainable. If you use less labor, you're more sustainable. If you carry less inventory, you're more sustainable. You don't even have to count it all up. Well, this is how we used to make phone calls in the past. And they even had a supervisor making sure everybody's working just right there. And then I've been noticing some of the telephone technology. I know we all have smartphones, but I was in Colombia and I saw this payphone on the wall and I thought, that looks pretty old. I haven't used one of those in a long time. And then I was a couple months later in Tokyo and I saw this payphone. I thought, boy, they have advanced their payphones. That looks pretty modern. And I still haven't used one in a long time. And then I was in Mexico a few months later and I saw this phone. I said, that looks even cooler, this swipe and call system. Again, I don't use one because I'm looking at the future of maybe needing fewer payphones, and this was the bank of payphones on the wall there at the swipe and call, and a guy was with me and said, yeah, somebody's already swiped 2 of them. And I like that. Well, in my continuing quest for telephone technology, I was at Brandix yesterday, and in this old-looking telephone booth, yes, they had a phone. Yes, I was there. It's a rather old phone. Half the dial looks like it's gone. But it was still interesting that we're talking about the past as we're driving towards the future. Let's go back a couple of years, back before the internet. So you couldn't order online. You'd order out of a catalog or call up, make a telephone order. And you didn't have any choice. If you placed an order, the fine print said to please allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. Well, guess what? Today, the worldwide average length of time that consumers are willing to wait when they order something, because you start thinking about it, and some people will say, well, sometimes it comes tomorrow. But people on average are willing to wait. It's now less than 3 days before you expect your order that you've placed is going to be at your house. Well, let's go to the future. The length of time that consumers will wait, it was already discussed earlier. So the answer is less than 24 hours. That is where we're headed. What are your businesses doing to keep up with those shifts in thinking and doing on behalf of the consumers? So what's the point? Please don't live in the past. You only have 2 legs. Live in the present, get ready for the future, because it's coming. And if you keep doing what you did the way you always did it, you know, you're going to get what you always got and all that sort of thing. Anybody that's ever been hunting? I've only been in one of these tree stands one time. Well, if you're not careful and you keep doing it the same old way, your competition is going to learn to do things differently than you. So, I mean, are you ready for that? Yes, if you can open your mind and think differently about it, then you can get ready. And I used to spend a lot of time setting this up and preaching it, but we've already been talking some about it, about industries have shifted. More and more people are getting comfortable with shipping products before they're manufactured. I used to have audiences look at me and say, "You're crazy. You can't ship it before I make it." Well, guess what? It's been happening in all kinds of other industries for quite some time. The newspaper industry 20 years ago, the USA Today came into being with a digital supply chain where the products were not printed and then shipped everywhere in the country or around the world. They were distributed electronically, digitally, converted locally, closer to the point of consumption. That was the first supply chain that did that. And then airline tickets moved in that direction. Concert tickets, money is moving all over the place in digital format. Sometimes we still take the paper money. And a couple of years ago when the iPod came out, it made CDs, cassette tapes, and 8-tracks were already obsolete. But CDs are obsolete as a music medium. You just take your iPod into your car, plug it right in, or wherever you want to go. It is having the product shipped directly to the consumer. In an area where we never thought, I don't know if I'd say never, but we didn't think it was going to happen as soon as it did, that you don't have to go to the Blockbuster or wherever and get either a VHS or DVD and bring it home. And our grandchildren would be saying, and you had to go get it and you had to take it back. And today that product is being distributed digitally, converted by the consumer. So how are we going to change our perspectives in order to do that within our industry? We just change the words. It's like when I told some people in our federal government that earmarks were bad like mothers-in-law are bad because of the word. And let's just call them programs of national importance, you'll get a whole lot more attention. If instead of thinking about the word manufacturing, think about the word as conversion. And what are the technologies that will allow us to convert from digital products to the physical products? And do they exist in this industry? Well, let me tell you. Go Google virtual dressing sites, and you will find that there are more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 100 or several hundred people that are saying they can make it more efficient, make your shopping experience easier or better. Some do. Some still let you order 3, return 1, return 2 because the size isn't right. You're seeing a lot of personal interaction within these stores. By the way, that was only halfway down through the list. I got kind of tired of pulling up all those sites for virtual dressing. And it's headed to your smartphone. The technologies already allow that. And there are different ways to do it. Some of them you key in your measurements, it'll create an avatar for you. Others you kind of have to move your body in front of the mirror so you line up with the model that's on front. We happen to believe that one of the core technologies, and when Kurt says TC Squared doesn't always develop, that's true. But one of the technologies we did develop was the first 3D body scanning system for the clothing industry. and have continued to leverage that technology to the point today where it will be a key component of online shopping, but also in-store shopping as retailers change the way they do things. And that first scanner was 180 square feet, cost a lot of money. Size got reduced over the years down to 45 in 2008 to 20 square feet, plus the technology has changed. So you no longer need to be enclosed in a dark room, but in broad daylight right here you could get scanned and have your measurements captured. So it's the key piece, but something else that's even more important is the visualization. That if you're going to do online shopping, you want to be able to see what it's going to look like on you and have it be photorealistic. And there are a number of companies that are working on this. This happens to be from Optitex. Gerber, Electra, Human Solutions, Tukatech, Optitex. A lot of them are working in the product development space to have real looking, where the garments will behave the way they will behave when you buy them and put them on physically. And so that's just a critical component of those developments. It starts with a digital body model. It's millions of data points in space that come out of the scanner. From that body model, you can extract measurements that you can then use to customize or do size prediction. Or you can create an avatar, and one of the technology's key breakthroughs was the ability to create an avatar in a couple of seconds from a body scan as opposed to 45 minutes to an hour of computer rendering. And so you want to be able to handle all kinds of shapes and sizes. And you'd like it to be realistic with skin tones. And I would think that at some point you want it to even look like you as you change outfits. And so there's some technologies that allow you to do that. One of them is just taking a 2D picture of your face, and there's some face wrapping technology that lets you keep key landmarks and put your face on your avatar. Because if it's your avatar, you want it to look like you. And then you want to be able to put clothes on your avatar. Well, there's an application that, in conjunction with TC Squared, a company in Belgium, developed some ongoing software, and I'm going to let you just see a quick look at how it works. But the idea is you get scanned, you take a picture, you create your avatar, and then from your avatar and your skin tones, the technology will tell you whether you're in autumn or a winter or summer, what season you are, and what colors would look best on you. Interactive styling, it's called, and then it'll recommend styles for you. So it's a fairly straightforward process, getting ready to roll out. It rolled out in China just a couple of weeks ago. There are 7 systems already going in, and getting ready to roll in the United States in a couple of weeks, but does automatic shape analysis once you get scanned. Tells you what colors you should wear, will recommend styles within a particular brand that would help your particular shape look better. There's also advice on hairstyling, fingernails, jewelry, and once you go through the process, there's over 100 pages of a report that you get to take with you. That's your personal styling advice. In conjunction, there's an interactive mirror where in the store you can have your avatar and you can pick things, choose things, see what they look like on you. And if you want to buy something, you can first go try it on. And the system will say, what size should you take to the dressing room to try on? And once you've done that, if you like it, you can make that purchase decision right there in the store. This is a woman that was in Belgium that never thought she would wear that red dress, but the system recommended it. She tried it on, ended up buying it. And but anyway, it's coming, and it's one of those things that fully integrates at the retail level to be able to have that shopping experience, but all the data's in the cloud. And so when a retailer gets the system, they will also get automatic website support that goes with it, so you can go home either from your smartphone or from your computer, and you can pull up your avatar and do more shopping at home. Or you go back into the store, stand in front of the mirror, and it recognizes your face, and it'll pull your avatar out of the database. So it makes the shopping a little bit more fun. And those are the basic 4 steps, but if you want to do custom, it also outputs to the made-to-measure system, so the patterns can be generated automatically. So let's take one step back. As we talk about how the supply chain is moving towards more and more digital, how are we going to get there? There are a couple of key technologies I want to share with you. Because if you go back to the 1960s, the order in which we did things is up here. We'd create products, we'd make a whole bunch of it, have it in a warehouse, we'd send people out to sell it, and then we'd ship it. And then in the 1980s, with quick response and just-in-time, we started saying, boy, if you could get some orders before you committed to all that production, you'd be more efficient. And that's when Mike said, and he did, well, if you can delay the manufacturing to after you ship it, you could be even more effective. And then I got all these funny stares, and you're crazy, and then so I use this word convert, and it makes a little bit more sense. Because there's a machine that's been out for a long, long time. It's not new technology. It's called a whole garment knitting machine from Shimaseki out of Japan. And Stoll out of Germany makes a similar technology now. It takes a 3D CAD file of the garment, the whole garment, sends it to the knitting machine, which is basically a flatbed knitting machine on the front and a flatbed knitting machine on the back with a special needle that loops across. So you have a circular whole garment knit to shape. The finished product is what comes off the machine. So when I saw the technology, I thought, that's it. Instead of this factory full of knitting machines, let's disperse them. Let's put a knitting machine in every local dry cleaners. And then take your order, ship your product to the closest one, and have it converted and pick it up when you're going to be by there anyway. And people said, Mike, you're crazy still. You have to have knitting experience to do that. I said, I understand, but VCRs weren't always plug-and-play devices either, at least not for our parents. At some point, if you can think about it, you should be able to do it. The point is, here's a technology that if you do have the raw materials and expertise, you don't have to think in terms of factories full of machines that make and then ship. You can begin to shift your thinking towards distributing and then converting locally. Technology's 20 years old. And in fact, there's a new name for it, for what that whole garment knitting machine does. It's called additive manufacturing. And the Advanced Manufacturing Center in the United States is really saying this is the next wave of manufacturing systems for the world. And so naturally it's something that I got pulled into because it can be addictive, especially once you find out what it is. So I've got